Thank you for joining us on the next episode of Small Business Chat. We got some good topics to talk about today, including how to run your business while you're away on vacation. Also, a couple of good trademark news involving Game of Thrones star Khaleesi, which is not what you think, and a couple other threads, including a trademark dispute between L'Oreal and a small business owner running their own trademark, NKD. So we got a lot to talk about. Today joins me, Matt. How's it going today?
It is fantastic. I'm glad to be back home from vacation and I am charged up and ready to go into fall. How about you?
Pretty darn good. I'm so sick and tired of it raining every day here in North Carolina. I can't even mow my lawn anymore because it's so thick with just water. So I'm my
Yeah.
last time mowing the lawn has been a nightmare. So, but how was
Yeah.
it? How was the weather in Alaska, Matt? Since this podcast, at least the first part of it is all on you because you were away for a week in Alaska. So tell us about that.
Less rainy. I was on the beautiful Ovation of the Seas. Thank you, Royal Caribbean, for a fantastic vacation for me and the family. And you it was actually beautiful up there. I mean, we started in Seattle, which was bright and sunny and like 55 to 60 degrees. And that pretty much describes almost the entire Alaska trip. Maybe one day we had a little drizzle, but you come back here and it is far rainier down here because of this hurricane thing that's offshore. But yeah, don't expect your yard to dry out anytime soon, man. If you're looking at the forecast, it's going to be just a deluge for the next couple of days. But Alaska was cool. I recommend it highly to anyone listening.
Do you mow your own lawn, Matt?
Yes, sometimes my son, when he's home from college, will actually do it for money. But it is a challenge right now, isn't it?
It is. Last time I did it, because my grass grows. I'm pretty sure everyone's does during the summer, but my grass grows. You have to mow it once every week or 2 weeks. And last time I did it, I had to do it because it was going to rain all the next week, and so I brought my lawnmower out there. And my lawnmower is. I'm not trying to gloat or anything. Is the baddest of the bad involving mowers. It is a Honda mower. It's got a Honda engine in it. It is the most powerful mower you can pretty much get for a push mower, and it was having so much problems and issues trying to mow because it's just so thick that it kept getting clogged with the blades. So I'd keep stopping before I could continue.
That's like the ultimate man bragging, right? But it's acceptable man bragging because it's just like, maybe we get to a certain age and all that sort of stuff. And like, they're very, "Hey, how fast can you run? How whatever." It's always a man thing. Now you're at that age. It's awesome to see you get there where it's like my lawnmower.
Yes, there's. I don't think I'd ever get to this point. My weed,
And
yeah,
yeah, and then all the guys out there are like, "Oh yeah, yeah. What do you got? The turbocharged? What do you got?" It's
right.
awesome. Yeah. So even your big Honda, buy American, but even your big Honda, yeah,
Yeah,
trouble. Bet a John Deere wouldn't have trouble.
right.
Sorry.
I need a push mower or not push mower, a riding lawnmower next. But my lawn's not that.
Honda, yeah.
It's just a big front lawn and little backyard. But
In fairness, John Deere's awesome, but Honda also makes a fantastic product too. I mean, those things start for years. I think I've had a Honda mower. That may even be my current mower now I think about it. And that thing starts day or night, 24 hours a day. I don't even think we winterize it. In North Carolina, you don't really need to winterize things too much because it just doesn't get that cold here.
right.
But anyways, where are you leading us? What journey are you leading us on today, sir?
Well, again, I said at the beginning, we're gonna go through a couple of topics of discussion, which is first of all, talking about business, running your business while you're away. So, Matt, you're fresh off the beat off that. Maybe we could talk about, who's in place. Maybe you should talk about just leading your managers up for success whenever you're away, or just maybe certain other things that you can do to kind of leave your business while you're away for success, so that you can still be successful even though you're kicking your feet up on a cruise. So, Matt, take us away. Tell us exactly what you would recommend to our listeners of how to run your business while you're away.
Yeah, thank you. And so, one of the things that, I'll say is I sometimes am a little bit of an outlier. Like, so for instance, if you read the wonderful book, 4 Hour Work Week, which is, one of the most famous business books of all time, the author talks about, detaching yourself completely from your work and, basically just setting up everyone to only, that they can get in touch with you like effectively 4 hours a week. I don't believe that's the best philosophy because I tried that philosophy once. And as you're aware, the business almost came flaming down because I had two employees that, if anyone's listened to our previous podcast, pretty much tried to burn the business down while I was on, once again, another 7-day cruise several years ago. And so I believe one of the hallmarks to basically, the first hallmark is like we always say, if you haven't picked up this book and you're an entrepreneur and you've never read E-Myth by Michael Gerber, please, dear God, stop what you're doing now, open up Amazon.com and order a copy of that book now, because it will tell you how to build your business for success. And effectively, you structure it like a franchise model. Like, in essence, you're going to be replicating your business over and over again, and you have to have that blueprint for success. Tells you what each manager is supposed to do, what each person is supposed to do underneath those managers. And you can run your business by getting the right people on the bus and in the right seats. A lot of buzzwords and phrases here, but it's true. But then give them that system to run the business. And whether or not you're there, they have that system. Now, what I have learned, at least works for me, and it depends on the size of your organization. Our organization, the one that we're currently talking about, the Trademark company, is still of a size that I think that it can run itself because of the great people that are here, but I'm still always going to look over the shoulder and be at least accessible to those people if they have those questions. Now, 6 years ago, when they almost burned the business to the ground in my absence, the challenge is the two people that largely were left in charge did not, one out of spite, one out of perhaps indifference, did not reach out to me when we had a significant challenge in the company. This past week was probably the most relaxing vacation I've had in 15 years because the company was running smoothly thanks to everyone. But there were 2 instances where I was reached out to, where they were significant instances. One of them. I'm not going to mention them here, and such. But at the end of the day, we were able to handle them very quickly and easily because I just sort of know, how these things should work. And they had to bother me on vacation, which you should, as an owner, especially of a smaller business, you should be willing to do, because you don't want to come down back to your business in flames. But number one, set up those systems, set up that franchise model. Number two, hire fantastic people to work on it and work within the model and knows how to do their job. But number three, you can't just completely say, I'm out, it's cool. Now, when you get up to 50, 100, 200 employees, that may be something that you can do because you do have your lieutenants in place that at every aspect know the business and they have, responsibilities. But I still have significant responsibilities in this company, even though they're far less than they used to be. And so when you have those significant responsibilities, you can't just completely detach and just say, well, don't talk to me for a week. So, but last week it worked like a perfect model. Everyone came in, they did their job. They did their job to the system that we've created. The managers made sure that they were doing their job. And when one of the 2 of the things that came up that were above what the managers could handle, because they are aware that that is above, that's something that is exclusively in my province. And we'll just simply say it's a computer security issue. That's still on me. They reached out to me. We resolved the issue, or we at least put it off until I was back in town. And then you're able to actually keep the business running, enjoy your vacation, know that it's going to be there when you get back to the business, and then just have a really great time. Did I talk your ears off on that one?
No, I think you hit everything right on the head, and all straight to the point. So I think you explained exactly what you need to do to again, like I was saying in the beginning, just kind of just setting yourself up for success whenever you leave and having great people to work for you, great managers. I'm not trying to go too much about myself. I'm just joking.
Yeah,
But
you're in there.
leave it up to us to kind of and just make sure you also I think you've also kind of just trained also the big guy Ian in the office the most, and then me as well, just what to do when you're away, and hiring good leaders to kind of just lead the way is always good. I feel very comfortable as always being in Ian's hands all the time. He does a really great job of just making everyone feel comfortable in the office, even if sometimes it's remote, and just making everyone really happy every single day is one of Ian's strengths. So
Yeah.
so awesome. So yeah, Matt, thanks
Yeah.
for telling us about that. Let's go ahead and jump on over to our first news article of the day, which
Ooh.
involves something very crazy. When I saw this, I couldn't believe it. And this involves Game of Thrones. I know, believe it or not. and have it still has to do with technically with trademarks. And it has to do with one of the main. Let me ask you also this question, Matt. Have you seen Game of Thrones?
Because you know the pop references, you have to ask me. Um, I have
Yeah,
only
yeah. I mean,
I have only okay, I have here's my knowledge of Game of Thrones. I can remember what about 7 or 8 years ago, several of the women who worked in the office were enthralled with this show called Game of Thrones, which I never watched. I think I've watched the first 5 minutes of the first episode and I kept falling asleep because yeah, I probably was putting it on at midnight. But I am also aware that's where Jason Momoa also, I don't want to say got his start, but I know that a lot of people, Jason Momoa was in the show as well, which I didn't know because, for those of you who don't know, that's Aquaman to me. But so I've watched a little bit of it. I have watched one or two or maybe three or no, I've watched the entire first season of the prequel, which is was the House of the Dragon.
the dragon. Yep.
Yeah, that was it's actually it's great stuff, but so I'm vaguely aware of what's going on, but I know it's a worldwide phenomenon. I can give it that. It's
Yeah, it's back. I mean, that the my background with it was I when Game of Thrones was popular, I was still living with my family at the time, and they were in control of what streaming apps to have every month, and theirs was Netflix and like Amazon Prime here there, and Game of Thrones was always on HBO Max, and I didn't have access. Well, back then it was just HBO before they did the
yeah.
whole Max thing. With me not having access to HBO, there was no way for me to watch Game of Thrones. And then when I finally did move out by myself to my first ever home, my apartment, I did get HBO and started watching Game of Thrones. But it was literally like on the last season that they were coming out with. That I jumped on board and I watched all the seasons to get ready for the new one. And I won't spoil anything, but apparently the last season was the worst season in the history of Game of Thrones. Everyone disliked it so much when that one came
Yeah.
out.
I
Um,
remember them saying something like they didn't sort of write it, or I think the principal creator of it had been booted off set by that time or something like that.
well, the
Um,
problem is that the obviously the huge popularity behind Game of Thrones was also the creator of the book series George R. R. Martin. He obviously created the book series, and he takes his time whenever he makes those books. And they were going to try to make the new season, but he still didn't finish the last season of the book, right? So they
uh,
just kind of just I don't know exactly if they even really got to see much of his material, but they just went off and made their own season, and I think that's the reason why that last season wasn't the greatest. I thought it was fine. I thought it was actually really good. But people who have been watching Game of Thrones for years were really upset because it just was just everything. It was all that build up, all those story characters all coming together, and then it just fell flat on its face from what people are saying.
so
I
by the way, we can talk about this at a future podcast, and I can't because I was an attorney at the time, and like this is in representative capacity. But just so you know, that there's another topic out here. It's called derivative rights from copyright license, and I'm sure this happened with Game of Thrones, but it's a very interesting topic to go into for another podcast. Which is just okay. So if an author creates a character, but then someone like an HBO or a Showtime or somebody else creates a series on that, who actually controls the creative, which way that character goes. And it's a very important thing for young authors and whatnot to understand because I was embroiled in like a huge controversy between a huge show, and I represented, and without talking about the players per se, I represented the author because they then took his character, and again, I don't know if it was Game of Thrones level, but it was close to it. And they took the character in a direction he didn't want it to go. So we got into a whole derivative rights fight over that. But that's for another podcast. And, another time, maybe we'll do that one next week.
okay.
So our copyright folks can actually understand what they own. And when you sign that big deal with one of the major production companies or production houses, what they can do. But bring us through the case of what happened recently here with this Game of Thrones thing.
Yeah, so like I said, when I saw this, I couldn't believe it. And Matt, when you saw it, you couldn't believe it either. I saw your
Yeah,
face
I laughed.
reading that news article. For those that don't know, me and Matt have a little meeting before each podcast just to talk about these news articles. And when he was reading it, he couldn't believe it either. So basically, a 6-year-old was recently denied, poor girl, a passport owing to her name bearing a strong resemblance to a popular Game of Thrones character. Lucy from Swindon, Wiltshire, revealed that passport officials had refused to issue a passport. This is the mom, Lucy, for her child Khaleesi. So, if anyone knows, Khaleesi is the Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, and she was again 6 years old, which is also again Daenerys Targaryen's alias. Sorry, excuse me. The official cited that Warner Bros. Pictures owns the rights to the name Khaleesi, so they could not issue a passport in the applicant's name because of potential copyright infringement. Lucy did not take this matter lightly. She turned to social media to voice her experience and mentioned that she and her daughter were anticipating their first trip to Disneyland in Paris. Wow, that's really upsetting. She sought legal assistance, which led to the passport officials apologizing for their behavior. Matt, what do you think?
One of the stupidest things I've ever heard in trademark law ever. I was like, I mean, I think we're in agreement on this, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I understand, like, if, for example, if this 6-year-old went and filed a trademark or copyright for the name Khaleesi and then got combated, but she's getting a passport like to go. So that's her name. She was just born.
Yeah. All we and just as we launch into this, we'll just simply say the end of this is that she ultimately gets the passport and the agency apologized for their mistake. But in essence, we all need to understand that, like, names can be trademarked. Like, so for instance, we know for a fact that Michael Jordan has his name trademarked. It doesn't mean that but think about how many other Michael Jordans there are out in the world. Like, okay, we can actually just here example, Michael B. Jordan, the famous actor. What we're saying is, if this was actually true, Michael B. Jordan could never leave the country because he would have his passport request denied because Michael Jordan, the famous basketball player, has the names trademarked or the name trademark. It's not how it works, folks. It's trademarks are basically goods and services related, and they're for commercial use. And we see this all the time. It doesn't mean that if your actual name is Michael Jordan, or in this matter Khaleesi, that you can be denied filing your taxes, getting a passport, opening a business, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what trademark usage is. I have no idea how the person that denied her trademark, they must have been like a paralegal in law school or something like that was going to, like, paralegal school at night or something. And they were just like, oh, well, that person can't have that name or whatever. I'm like, they're asking for a goddamn passport. I mean, it was atrocious.
And it's a little 6-year-old. What's the poor little 6-year-old gonna do? Like, come on.
Well, it's a passport isn't commercial use. I mean, just think about that. Think about how many Michael Jordans. I bet there are, like, seriously, I bet there, if you can actually search. I can't remember what website it is you search it. I think it's how many of me are there or something. How many are there? Something like .com, and you can search how many like last names are of your same last name. And I think you can actually search like the full name as well. I bet there are something like 15 to 20,000, maybe even like 50 or 100,000 Michael Jordans in this country. That would mean only one can get a passport. That's just stupid. Now, by the way, I should emphasize this was the UK. This was not the US passport office. Excuse me.
Right. Exactly.
And the wonderful people of the US passport. I don't want my passport getting pulled. The wonderful people of the US passport agency, or whoever does that. We like them a lot. But anyways, this is just a simple mistake made by probably an administrative clerk over in the UK thing. But it's one of those things that sometimes when you see, you're just like, it falls within our purview because it's trademarks, but it's just, once again, people just don't understand the law sometimes.
Exactly.
And then it's a real challenge when you see people trying to apply, thinking that they're an expert in the law, and they're not. And so, like I say, who is that? It's usually people who are either going to law school or paralegal school or something, like, oh, well, I know something, I'm really smart. And you're just like, no, you're a freaking idiot. You're a freaking idiot. Sorry. Can I get a little political here for a second?
Yeah, go for it. As always, I think we have a certain section in all of our podcasts for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. How many people do you know who are experts in the Constitution? They're like, well, that's unconstitutional. That's unconstitutional. All the stuff that goes on in the news today. Well, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. I'm going to tell you something.
Some liberal.
I went to law school. I was a practicing attorney for 20 something years, and I don't consider myself to know enough about the Constitution, just blurt out randomly, that's unconstitutional. That's unconstitutional. We got 9 justices, which, whether or not you agree or disagree with their political bent, are freaking geniuses in the law. And they know what is and isn't constitutional, and they can articulate their reasons. But whenever I hear someone like in this day and age, like, we see, Trump saying something, or Biden or Kamala Harris saying something, whatever, and people are like, well, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. I'm like, really? What provision of the Constitution does it violate? And then no one can ever answer. Remember, I don't know, were you in the office the other day when I actually brought the Constitution in and read it?
No, no. I was like,
Yeah,
brought the
yeah,
Constitution in.
yeah. Well, not the actual one. I mean, the
Oh,
Library of. Yeah, I pulled a. Oh no, that was Declaration of Independence. They stole in National. Was
great
it?
movie,
Yeah, what was it called? National.
National Treasure.
Thank you, National Treasure. Yeah, no, I didn't actually, but I brought in from law school. I had the actual Constitution. I actually sat down and I just read it to everyone, just because I was getting so sick and tired of hearing people, just blurt out like they're constitutional scholars. And I'm just like, well, no, you're not, and by the way, it's fascinating. If you haven't read the Constitution, you should, and all the amendments, because one of the fun things is like reading the amendments and you're like, oh, wow, our original forefathers actually didn't think about that. And that's a pretty darn good amendment. Like, hey, we're all created equal, and, women can vote, and then, outlawing, alcohol, and then, re-allowing alcohol, and all these different amendments and such. It's a great document to actually read. But then just listening to the people say it, it just reminded me when we read this Game of Thrones thing, I'm just like, this was just someone who was put in a position of somewhat power, issuing a passport, that thought they knew something. But in the danger of this is that they thought they knew something and applied something improperly. Now the more I think about it, they were probably a trainee, who actually did it. And this poor kid got denied on the grounds of, trademark usage. The name is trademarked when it is.
But Game of Thrones is trademarked underneath of a good or service, and not under some person's name, though.
Right, but that's the whole thing. Like, trademarks are goods and services related. We know that, right? Like, so the person's applying for a passport. They're not doing any commercial use of it. They're just, that's my name. What do you want me to do? Change my name? It'd be like the same thing as, like, I'm sure think of any famous character in any movie, anywhere, anytime, any place, and like, that means you're saying, like, if someone has the name Rocky, they could never actually get a passport. I mean, it's just, it's just silly. So it's just someone, one of the most dangerous things is, when people think they know something and they are adamant that they know something, and no, you're just an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just an idiot.
Well,
and such, and not to rip on this person in the UK. It's a simple mistake, but the answer is, stay in your lane, do your job.
yeah, I mean, looks like it got all cleared up from what I can see. Looks like the mother went and sought legal advice and got it all taken care of. So she's good to go, but still crazy to hear about. And Matt, I think this is the sign for you to start watching Game of Thrones.
Exactly.
I think it should be. I mean, I don't know if you would binge watch shows, but I think this should be one of your very first.
Well, I've heard there's more, that's what I've heard is I need more naked men in my life. Evidently, I've heard that's one of the jokes in Game of Thrones is they show a lot of male nudity. And so I'm like, yeah,
both sides.
I'm like, hey.
So, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and hop on over to our next topic of discussion. Also, Matt, I almost forgot. What is your decision on this with the Game of Thrones name? Is it infringement or no?
Really?
I mean, we got to do it every time. We got to do it. We got
not infringement. What do you think? Not
infringement. Okay, not infringement. I also ruled. Okay. All right. So our next topic of discussion is a battle between L'Oreal, so the cosmetic giant, and also a small salon owner in rights to their name or their trademark name, their NKD brand. And L'Oreal, if you don't know already, L'Oreal has a huge project line called Naked. So
not at all descriptive, by the way, because Naked really describes sort of a look these days of having makeup on, but it sort of looks like you don't have makeup on. So good luck if they actually got that trademark. Good for them.
Yeah, I'll read it here. Rebecca Downswell, a salon owner from Linchester, England, finds herself embroiled in a long and exhausting legal battle against the global cosmetics giant L'Oreal. Her fight revolves around the trademark of her business named NKD, which has come under scrutiny due to its similarities to L'Oreal's product line. Naked, the situation has not only drained her finances, oh, that's sad, but also her emotional well-being and livelihood. The conflict traces back to when Downswell attempted to renew her trademark for NKD. So that means her trademark was already registered at some point. That's interesting. So think about that, Matt. Keep that in mind. A name she registered upon launching her business in 2009. However, her problems began after the trademark expired 10 years later. Downswell admits that she forgot to file for renewal with a 6-month window, a lapse that occurred as particularly chaotic for her business due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Once she realized her mistake and sought to register the name, L'Oreal swiftly moved to oppose her application. L'Oreal, known for its extensive portfolio of beauty products, asserted that Downswell's NKD line could confuse consumers because of its symphonic similarity to Naked, a popular, again, eyeshadow brand. In statements to the press, the French beauty conglomerate emphasized its commitment to protecting its longstanding trademark rights. They claim that allowing NKD to operate under a similar name would potentially mislead customers. Matt, your thoughts?
Wow, there's a lot there. So
start off with the trademark was already trademarked at one point.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating because in the US, you acquire trademark rights, by using the trademark. And so this thing was actually registered for, it sounds like, a decade. And so, the first thing that I would do if I were to have been representing this person in the UK, and I was trying to quickly find, I can't find if UK. So in the US, you get trademark rights by either registering your trademark or just simply using it in commerce. I'm off the top of my head, I think that's the same in UK. There's only a handful of countries, like 8 to 10 countries, I think, in the entire world, that basically say use. If they are exclusively a registration country, in other words, you only get rights when it's registered, then she could potentially have a problem by letting this lapse. But again, not knowing all the subtleties of the UK law versus the US law. But if we have very similar laws for the UK and the US, and I'm pretty sure that we actually do on this one. And I'm sure if she could hire an attorney, so there's all these things that go into this. But the first thing that I would do is, when I sought legal assistance, I would possibly countersue L'Oreal if I had prior rights. So we know in the US, her trademark would have been incontestable. In other words, they can't even come after her after 5 years of registration. Again, not knowing the UK registration system as well as we know the US registration system, but even beyond that, I'd be very fascinated to know how long L'Oreal has used a Naked in the UK as a brand, because if they have used it, for less time than she has used hers, this is a great countersuit. Because I know that I myself have been in a situation where, my office once authored a cease and desist letter to somebody who actually had priority of use over our client. And that was a very awkward moment. But fortunately, we were able to get past it. They were actually relatively nice about it. And we were, to get through that issue. But the issue primarily is if L'Oreal, sues this woman, have they admitted to a likelihood of confusion? And then if she can show priority of use, if that's the UK law, does she have a countersuit for millions against these people? Millions and millions of pounds. So that's the first level of the analysis. What do you think?
Well, I see why L'Oreal is doing it. I mean, obviously their defense is that, just like any big business, they want to enforce their trademark rights. And if they stop doing it and just let anybody pass up or try to use their names, then there'll be a flood of people trying to rip off their brand. I don't think it really, just harm them in any way like a small business would, because I mean, L'Oreal is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. So what is a little small business going to do to them, right? Nothing, right? But I mean, I'm looking at the USPTO's database right now, and Matt, maybe you can kind of shed some light on some trademark knowledge here. I can also add in too, but I see a couple of trademarks here that's also Naked. like for right here, I'm seeing the whey company, that makes all the protein shakes. They have a
Yeah.
liquid nutritional supplement that is called Naked. There's this other completely different trademark, different ownership underneath of Naked, and they provide wine, and that those are both registered trademarks. And then I have another trademark. Yeah, one other name trademark right here. It's Naked. So instead of NAKED, it's NAKID, and they offer chocolate bars. So Matt, take us through why those trademarks could possibly be registered and why this NKD trademark is having more of an issue. Is it because NKD is pretty much in the same field as L'Oreal, or is there something more to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what you had said earlier is they're in a very similar field. And since those other trademarks that you listed are in essence beverage or foodstuffs related, I'm sure that, the attorneys for L'Oreal are less concerned about that than and such. 'Cause I know, yeah, I can remember Naked Wines and all that. But if you're in a sort of a direct field of competition with them, or even something that's more in their orbit, you're likely to possibly have a dispute. I think that's, where this is coming down. Um, so just sort of twisting this a little bit to get just more, a little bit, more like, here's what I would think. When you sort of analyze this, and one of the challenges, and this is, of course, a small business blog. It's not, we're not necessarily anti big business, but this is really, something more that we're doing for, hey, your entrepreneurs and small businesses out there. Your big challenge are, and you mentioned at one point, she was really struggling to pay her legal bills. Um, as a small business, one of the things that you should always know, and honestly, as just an individual person, is there's some really good lawyers out there, and sometimes you really need a good lawyer. The challenge with the legal practices today is, in my opinion, it has gotten so expensive to hire quality legal assistance. And again, I'm not saying it's not necessarily worth it, but you can literally go into bankruptcy just trying to defend yourself from something. And it's something that the U.S. justice system does not properly account for. And it's a real tragedy that it does not. And I've called for this for years. But so the first thing that you have to do is you have to analyze, well, does L'Oreal have a case here? And candidly, I can see why they would bring this with the NKD because, in other shows I've been like, oh, no infringement, or they don't really even resemble each other. In this instance, if you pronounce the NKD on a radio show, you could actually pronounce it naked, like if you really sounded it out. And I could see L'Oreal then having a problem because if she did commercials, that could be a potential likelihood of confusion. The complicating factor is does this woman have priority of use on them under the UK system? And does she have a potentially counterclaim for infringement by L'Oreal? But then the really problem, the thing you have to think about as a small business is, but what is this going to cost me? And I cannot tell you how many times that I defended over the however many years. And one of the reasons why, originally the company was a law firm. And one of the reasons why I did this was I honestly got sick and tired of seeing major companies and major law firms push people around because they couldn't afford lawyers. And so we created a model where I can't say it was affordable for everyone, but probably the legal expenses that our clients were charged back in the day were like a fifth of what a major law firm would charge you, and we were successful against them at a very high rate because we knew what we were doing. And I'm just like, we are cutting out the middleman. We don't have 75,000 paralegals working for us, and we don't have New York offices and Los Angeles offices and such. So we kept the cost structure low. The challenge with this woman and others in small businesses, you have to quickly make a decision as to whether or not this is financially feasible for you to defend such a thing and or to make a counterclaim. I know in the US, something like this would cost upwards of $300,000 US to defend over a period of about 18 months. Most small businesses don't have that. And that's why it's just, and big businesses and big law firms know this. And so it's in essence, the process can be what kills you, not necessarily the case. And that's a real shame. And that's what we need to address in this country, which is litigation in and of itself, be it initiated by the government or initiated by, an individual corporation or individual, should not be the end all to anyone's company. It should be a situation where there has to be affordable legal services such that you can actually defend your rights. because if not, the word justice is just a sham and it doesn't exist. And so that's been my opinion for a long time. Coming back to this case, when we look at this, we think, okay, well, does she have rights? Does she have prior rights? Is it possibly it's infringement? Should she, countersue? But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to a dollars and cents thing. And can she afford it? Or can L'Oreal just outspend her and the big man crushes another little person yet again, just because it's a matter of finances? And to me, that's a freaking tragedy. But that's something that small businesses have to consider every single day. Is this the hill? Is this the fight that I'm going to fight?
Good point, sir,
Sorry.
Matt.
There was my
time to
my
remind
soapbox.
another good time to remind everyone that this episode is sponsored by the Trademark Company, where we make legal matters involving trademarks, copyrights, patents a little less cost, a little more cost efficient for those folks that are small business owners that obviously don't have the sometimes the budgets to pay out a huge lawyer or attorney to thousands and thousands of dollars to handle the same stuff that we can do for way less fees. And we also have a lot of information on our side, as you can see. Our owner Matt here, Mr. Matt, has a lot of information on his side, as we can see in every single podcast. So we take his knowledge and we spread it across the land, and so we can help, again, small business owners like yourself, who's whoever watching this right now, with your trademark.
And not to pull who we were talking about earlier today, but not to pull that, but just to sort of also chime in. One of the whole bases for the company and why we founded it was to also be a resource for those small businesses out there. So even if we don't provide the service, we will make phone calls to basically find that service for you. So if you, for instance, were certainly sued in Los Angeles with a trademark dispute, you can call us. We don't have the ability to defend you in that because that's not what we do. We're a filing firm, but we know great attorneys in every area, and that we can say, and we don't get compensated for this in any way. We're just here as a resource for you, and we will help you out to find. Just call us, and we'll basically be like, oh, go to this law firm or go to this law firm. We've seen their work in the past, and you may be able to afford them, et cetera, et cetera. But we're just here to basically support small businesses in any capacity that we can.
Exactly. We're here for you, both with the podcasts that you listen to, and then also, helping with your trademark needs. So I'll leave as always, I'll leave our link in the description for anyone that's listening. But Matt, to finish that topic off, infringement or no?
Not knowing the UK laws and such, and everything we've talked about, on the assumption that she's been using this thing for over a decade, just sort of twisting the US laws into it, I'm giving this, in my opinion, a big fat no.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why I would say possibly this is more in L'Oreal's favor is because, I mean, they are trying to enforce their brand, because they have a big brand called, obviously, Naked, and they have every right to do so. That, I mean, obviously, and just like you were pronouncing it before, Naked, that sounds like naked, and they are also in the same field. So I would say there is a good chance. I'm not saying it's out of left field or anything like that. Last thing, which was that Game of Thrones thing we just talked about, but I'd say this one's more realistic. So, but my opinion, no, I don't think it is, especially since she had it before. I think she should get it at the end. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Say no.
Fantastic.
All right, so that'll do it for today's podcast. Again, Matt, thanks for joining me as always every single week. If anyone ever wants to reach out to us on Facebook or YouTube or any other of our social media platforms to want to join our podcast, especially if you're a small business owner, we'd love to hear you out and love to interview you to see what business you're currently in. So anyways, that'll do it for us today. Please stay in tune for our next week's podcasts. We'll probably cover another couple of trademark news topics, and maybe also just some helpful advice for the day as well. So Matt, anything to say to the folks?
Thanks for listening. Thank you, Jacob.
No problem. Thanks again for everyone that's listening, and have a great day.